Update: Anastasia Meter's body found. Pastor Timothy Crumitie charged. Originally posted a few years ago. Meter's body was found by a water tower in Mooresville, North Carolina, not far from where her vehicle was found. Took 10 months to identify the remains. Oddly enough, I have not had Reddit for some time now, but when I got back on today I had a message asking if I was the one who made a post about Timothy Crumitie. A string of bodies, a missing person, and a serial killing pastor. Concord, North Carolina. The first known run-in with law enforcement. Pastor Timothy Lavon Crumitie, 52 years old, was a pastor at a Kannapolis, North Carolina church for many years when he was arrested for his first known murder. Pastor Tim loaned Danny Day Johnson $5,000 on the day he was murdered, and was seen with him on bank surveillance camera footage. Regardless, Danny Day Johnson was gunned down later the same day and was found deceased on a public boardwalk near Mallard Creek Road. Pastor Tim was arrested in June 2005 for the murder. Almost exactly 5 years later, Pastor Tim had all charges dismissed by prosecutors, who felt that they did not have enough evidence to try him. He spent those 5 years behind bars without bail. A robbery or something else? On July 3, 2013, Pastor Tim's wife Sharon Crumitie, and friend/acquaintance James Banks, were murdered in his garage. The circumstances, according to Pastor Tim, is that James Luther Banks attempted to break into the garage of the Crumities. Banks then shot Pastor Tim's wife, Sharon, in the head, before Pastor Tim allegedly was able to wrestle the gun away from Banks and then shoot him in the head. Pastor Tim survived this supposed botched robbery and only sustained a gunshot wound to the hand. He was never charged in this crime, and it was considered self-defense. Due to the only surviving witness being Pastor Tim Crumitie, there was no one to rebut the self-defense story. Charges for insurance fraud and arson. Not even 6 months later, in December of 2013, Pastor Tim's home was burned to the ground. It was determined that the fire was intentionally set for insurance, and Pastor Tim was arrested on March 24, 2014, on charges of arson and insurance fraud. An attempted double murder. Pastor Tim and Kim Cherry had an on-again/off-again type of romantic relationship for a period of time, which ended towards the end of 2015. On April 3, 2016, Kim Cherry and boyfriend Michael Gretzinger were attacked by Pastor Tim while returning home from a night out. Both returned to Cherry's apartment when Pastor Tim stepped out from behind the front door, ordered Gretzinger to get on his knees, and then shot him point-blank in the back of the head execution style. He then tied and bound Kim Cherry, took her to his home in Rowan County where he kept her for a few hours, and then went to a construction site. At the site, Pastor Tim ordered Cherry to walk ahead of him, to stand still, and shot her in the back of the head. She fell to the ground and pretended to play dead. He then came up and shot her in the head again. A double tap. What Pastor Tim didn't plan on was Cherry surviving, as neither bullet penetrated her brain. He loaded her body into the trunk of the car and drove it back to her apartment complex. When he parked and left, she jumped out of the trunk and went to a neighbor's home to call 911. The trial ended in February 2018, when Pastor Tim Crumitie was found guilty. A missing woman, Anastasia Meters, 28 years old, was last seen by her family in June 2015. On August 9, she was reported to police as a missing person. Ms. Meters' car was discovered abandoned at a Mooresville town park. Mooresville is approximately 20 miles from Concord/Kannapolis. According to Anastasia's sister, she observed both Meters and Pastor Tim together at a hair salon on June 17, 2015. The police found bodily fluids of an unknown nature in the car, and are testing it. The last update on the disappearance of Anastasia Meters was on November 23, 2016. Since that time there have been no further updates. The police have not stated they believe her disappearance involves Pastor Tim, but the family firmly believes that he murdered her. This writer's conclusion: I believe that Pastor Timothy Crumitie is a serial killer. Although no publications describe him as such, I believe that there are other victims of his that at this time are unknown. He was 39 years old in 2005 when Danny Johnson was murdered. It was at this time he was jailed for 5 years and then released. What did the pastor do before that? 39 seems to be late in the game to be committing your first crime, and then to develop with multiple people around you dead under mysterious and violent circumstances. Who else could have been a victim?
Guy sounds like a psychopath. He probably is a serial killer.
How TF she survived 2 shots to the back of the head at presumably near point-blank range, and keep it together enough to escape and call 911. Impressive.
There's court footage that plays her 911 call. It's crazy. She has some slurred speech and confusion, but clearly says it was Tim and says gunshots, in my head. She even said yes ma'am a few times to the 911 operator. which I don't know why, but was so heartbreaking and sweet all at once. I am glad she was able to face him and put this sob behind bars.
He was a felon before he was a minister. He served something like 8 years for armed robbery and related crimes in the 90s, and it was during after that sentence that he became a minister. Sounds like whatever religious conversion that he made didn't stick, or he just saw a way to con people. A church with only 50 members can be much more of a personality cult than a functioning church.
Guys, I meant to also add, the last crime, the double shooting, the female was related to Ms. Meters as well. Her sister in the latest news article discusses it. I'll try to post it. The attack occurred right after Ms. Meters went missing.
The woman shot in the head was Anastasia's mother.
Not familiar with the case overall, but shooting oneself in the hand to cover up the powder burns is simply genius level shit.
Pretty sure this guy has lost the right to the title pastor at this point.
I find it very fucky that he spent 5 years in prison and then had charges dropped. 5 years would be a long sentence in most places. But he was there for nothing? I mean, if he wasn't charged, he wasn't sentenced.
The first thing that seemed peculiar to me is that there was no possible mention of rape, as this is by far the motive of most male serial killers. Then I noticed other things. First, unlike female serial killers who tend to kill people they know, male serial killers attack strangers, but he seems to only have murdered people he knows. Also, in one case he killed his wife along with a man, and, in the other, he killed his ex-girlfriend along with her boyfriend. So to me one possibility is that he is a very jealous man who can't control his rage.
Seriously, what kind of a badass is Ms. Kim Cherry to jump out of the trunk of a car at Pastor Tim? He must have had the shock of his life.
A trail of devastation. Shame he wasn't given a life sentence after the first double homicide. I swear for some reason if the criminal claims to be a religious person people somehow think they wouldn't do such a thing. Even though the opposite is usually the case.
I would say it's never too late for psychopaths to get into the game, if you want to call murdering people that people snap when they snap, but I also would believe of him committing other crimes before 2005. This dude is bad news.
So, what do you think of Timothy Crumitie? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe.